Let's go through the papers this morning, and joining us today, broadcaster Liz Kershaw and deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray. Good to see you both this morning. Freddie, let's kick off with you, should we, in the Mail, where they're saying we won't be cowed by the nuclear threats made by Vladimir Putin. Well, it's easy for them to say, isn't it?
With tough words, a united front. I think everybody expected this kind of response from both Joe Biden and Liz Truss. I think the difficulty is, and the thing that they can't address, is what happens next. And the sort of paradox of this situation is the more we win in Ukraine, the more the West wins in Ukraine, the more dangerous the situation becomes, because as everybody knows, Putin is desperate. The speech was terrifying. And everybody accepts, Liz Truss accepts, that we shouldn't take these threats lightly. He may be bluffing, he may not be. And if he's not bluffing, that's very, very serious for the world.
Yeah, it's hugely difficult, Liz, isn't it? Because we've got to say no, we won't be. We're not going to be threatened by you, but we've got to take it beyond seriously, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm laughing at you turning to me possibly for a solution.
A bit of common sense northern solution, Liz.
Okay, well, it's interesting to read in the last couple of days about conscription, basically, in Russia, a sign of desperation to replenish his forces, and the fact that young men are buying one-way tickets out of Russia, or trying to, while there's a supply before they close the borders. And also there's been actual rioting, which is very brave in Russia, to protest in the streets. But what it all adds up to, as Freddie was alluding to, is Putin being cornered and possibly is feeling that he's being humiliated because his vast military might has come unstuck, and Ukraine is regaining ground and cutting off supplies and winning. And the more that happens, we all know what a bully's like, even in the playground. If you humiliate a bully, they'll go away, rally their resources, and come back even more violently and outrageously. So how do you deal with a man who's possibly terminally ill, nothing to lose, clearly insane, and not rational? It's extremely frightening.
I thought it was very interesting, Freddie, to see yesterday Russians voting with their feet, getting in their car, trying to get over the Finnish border. Pictures of them being completely blocked up there. One-way flights out of Moscow completely booked up for days now. Protests right across 30 cities in the country. They're not happy at the thought of anyone with sort of military experience being conscripted now, and they're not happy with the war.
Well, again, that would hopefully be a reason for optimism that Putin's government is falling apart. But unfortunately, it's not necessarily, because everybody assumes that sort of a nice liberal democracy will come in place of Putin. It probably won't. It will probably be much harder nationalists who have regarded NATO as at war with Russia for a long time. So it's a very, very difficult situation. And I think, huge admiration for the people protesting in Moscow at the moment. But, is it realistic that a benign government is going to take over in Moscow? I don't think so.
No. OK, let's turn things closer to home. Liz, what's the eye saying about the Prime Minister's plans?
Well, obviously, the plans are economic, but hugely political, and the eyes, not that complimentary, confident or supportive. Other newspapers are The Sun, for example, their lead article today is, but what she's doing, I think, is very brave. She's saying, right, let's shake things up. We've tried austerity, up since 2008. We've tried cutting the expenditure of the government. We've tried cutting the national debt, and the economy is stagnant. Productivity is really low. What we need in order to provide the public services that we want is more money into the treasury, more tax. We need to really get this economy cranked up, and her advisors and allies in the cabinet feel that the way to do that is to kind of spend your way out of it. So put more money in people's pockets by taking away the national insurance hike that Rishi Sunak introduced, and encouraging business by cutting reversing the corporation, or rather not introducing the proposed hike in corporation tax. And I can see that, the logic of that, because a lot of companies although they like to brand themselves as British, are actually registered in places like The Hague, in Holland, or in Dublin, in Ireland, because corporation tax is lower. Great example is Diageo, which owns all the major Scottish whisky brands and most of the spirits that you drink, but is registered in St James or Pall Mall, etc., but pays corporation tax in the Netherlands, so it doesn't go into our treasury coffers, it doesn't help the people of Scotland. So I can see why this is trying to make the UK more attractive in which to invest, and also by not taking 1.5% more out of people's pay packets, so they've got more disposable income. At the same time, as we've discussed before, you've got the Bank of England raising interest rates, which affect people with a mortgage or a credit card or a loan. So it's give with one hand and take with the other. I really hope, some papers are optimistic, I really hope that it pays off. I really admire her for sticking to her guns and trying something different.
It is, but the eye's right then. It is a gamble.
Oh, it's definitely a gamble, because she's increasing government borrowing at a time when because interest rates are rising, it's becoming more expensive to borrow, but also when the pound is tanking.
I'm borrowing more to pay for an extraordinarily expensive energy strategy that we're only really beginning to see the details of, Freddie, and the idea that it's going to potentially cost 2 times the amount that furlough cost, and that's assuming it's only for 6 months for business and for domestic for 2 years. Who knows where it's going to go?
Well, there's a lot of guesswork on the energy costs, because, of course, we don't know what the price of gas will be in a few months' time. But I think the thing that strikes me is that even among the Tory party, Liz is quite right to say some of the papers are optimistic, but even among the Tory party, there's sort of palpable sense of doom about everything. And, even among sort of people who supported Truss, there's not really any certainty about this agenda. And I find that quite striking, because I think it is quite a bold agenda. And I think everybody agrees Britain needs some kind of shock economic therapy. And I'm just surprised that there aren't more people behind Liz Truss in this very early stage of her premiership.
Wow. It's definitely something bold was needed in all of this. It's whether it's going to work or not, but
well, I suppose
the
big question is, will the energy bazooka solve that question and then let the rest of the economy grow? That remains to be seen.
I read yesterday that 60% of people, this is quite astounding, don't have a mortgage.
Really?
Yeah, 60% it says. So that would suggest that only 40% of people are going to really be paying the price of the interest rates, which...
Well, unless, of course, if the other 40% are renting...
Landlords are going to raise the prices as well.
Rents are going to go up, aren't they?
I don't know, I'm a landlord, and I was speaking to my friend who's also a landlord recently, in this last week, and we were saying, we're not putting the rents up, because the people who are living in them will pay more. 40% of that will go to the tax man. 10% of that, put your rent up by 50 quid. The letting agent gets 5 quid. The government gets 40%, and you end up with about 25 quid. The poor 20 quid, and the tenant's paying another 50 quid. It's just not fair.
Freddie, can we turn our attention to the front of the Times? This was circulating yesterday evening, wasn't it? And this is the massive lawsuit being brought against not just Donald Trump, but members of his family. Tell us more.
Well, I've been writing about Trump for about 6 years, and this story has been going on for about 6 years. I think it's spreading to the family is new, but it's the New York Attorney General Letitia James, who is a very political figure, has launched this very spectacular civil suit with criminal implications. But it's a civil suit that is really another gesture against Trump. And whatever you think of Donald Trump, I think he has a point when he says that the Democrats are weaponizing the legal system against him. Because this is clearly with an eye to the midterms, which are coming up, the midterm elections, which are going to be very big, and the Democrats are doing slightly better.
Why is it clearly with an eye to the midterm? Just because of the timing?
Because the Democrats feel the more they can keep the conversation about Trump, the more they can mobilize their voters to get out there, because they're worried about Trump coming back. So Trump is a sort of useful bogeyman.
But political or not, if he has done something illegal, it needs to be addressed, doesn't it?
Well, the allegation is that he has inflated the value of his assets, which I think every American billionaire has done at some stage in their life. I mean, I think there is something there, but I think it's been 6 years now, and nobody has quite managed to figure out what it is. And in fact, a couple of big sort of scoops against Trump on his tax affairs have actually backfired slightly, because a few years ago it emerged that Trump was paying slightly more tax than he probably should have done or could have done. So, I mean, I do think eventually, there's so many investigations into Trump, inquiries into Trump, eventually it does make an effect, and it will probably stop him.
But
and he is a toxic figure.
He was so famous, wasn't he, for The Art of the Deal? And he's going to have to bring out a new book, The Art of Dodging Prosecution, because he has case after case brought against him, whether it's impeachment, whether it's the FBI coming after him, and it never seems to come to anything.
He's pretty good at dodging it, and the American justice system does move very slowly. Even by legal system standards, it moves very, very slowly. So that's partly why this has taken so long. But it's also that they don't have the smoking gun, and it's a lot like the Russia collusion inquiry. They never have the smoking gun to get him, because there's always something murky there, but they never quite pin it on him.
Oh well, we shall watch with interest. Meantime, you need to see a doctor, Liz. You can see one in a fortnight.
Well, gee whiz. A fortnight's a long time if you're really suffering or you've got a progressive illness. Theresa Coffey is now head of the NHS, looking after that as a member of the cabinet. And the other thing she said is we're going to stop this 8 a.m. lottery
You're right.
for appointments. Have you ever tried?
Oh, it's a nightmare.
I like the way they described it as a Glastonbury style free for all at 8 o'clock.
It's like the lines are open now.
Yeah.
Start dialing. And
there for an hour.
It's like a radio quiz, isn't it?
Yeah. And I've fortunately not had to do that for myself, but I have had to do it for somebody I care about. And also, this person got into dire straits and had an accident due to his condition, which could have killed him if somebody hadn't saw him and leapt in to help. So after he'd been ringing the doctor's surgery at 8 o'clock for about 4 months, and hanging on for half an hour, and then at, say, 8:30 being told, I'm sorry, we've no appointments today. So, being like I am, I said, right, and got in my car, drove up. What are you doing? I said, we're going to the doctor's tomorrow. Well, you can't, they won't let you in. So I said, they will. So we went to the surgery, he wouldn't come in, he sat in my car. The doors were locked. So this is in May, and this is post, lockdowns and COVID and everything else. And the doors were locked, but this family came, we pressed the buzzer, and they had an appointment. So as the doors opened and they went in, I went in as part of that group. And then when they'd been seen, empty except for one receptionist. I'm just telling you this, so it's not boring, as an example. So the family got seen, and then I stood there and said, I'd like an appointment, please. And she said, oh, you can't do that. I said, well, I'd like an appointment. Oh, tell him to ring in at 8 o'clock. No, he's been doing that for 4 months. Well, I can't help you. I said, okay, well, I'm going to stand here till you do. And I went, and I meant it. And she said, well, I haven't got any appointments, face-to-face appointments. I said, beg your pardon, and I wasn't attacking her, and I felt sorry for her. She said, I have 3 face-to-face appointments with a GP a week. I said, how many patients have you got? 14,000. I said, why is that? So she went, I have to tell you, these GPs don't want to work. She said, they don't come in. So in the end, she kindly gave me, she said, all right, I'll give you one of these appointments. And this person was able to go and see a doctor. And following that, they've had, talks with the doctor, they've been fully examined, they've had tests, they've got the right medication, they're having talking therapy, different person. But if you're not that confident or bullshit or pushy, then
you don't get anywhere.
There's a guy in the papers yesterday who used to be an NHS executive whose wife died waiting for an appointment.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Shut up, Liz.
Shut up, Liz, is what I'll say, because we're out of time. But we'll catch up with you a little bit. Don't you start, Freddie.
We're out of time.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll get back to you next hour, I promise.